not sit there and deceive ourselves.
The year is 2016. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari is hell-bent on ending corruption in the country. His anti-corruption war is putting the Nigerian judiciary on his heels. No one is safe from the long arm of the law.
There isn't going to be any party member or any personality that can escape justice.
To President Buhari, the judiciary must be cleaned up. But while the president and his team have their searchlights on the judiciary, a former president believes same can be done to the lawmakers. In a statement issued during a lecture in November 2016, former President Olusegun Obasanjo called the Nigerian National Assembly a den of corruption by a gang of unarmed robbers. According to the former president, the National Assembly cabal is worse than any cabal that anybody may find anywhere in Nigeria's national governance system at any time. He said members of the National Assembly pay themselves allowances for staff and offices they do not have or maintain. The former president further claimed that, quote, once you are a member, you are co-opted and your mouth is stuffed with rottenness and corruption that you cannot opt out, as you go home with not less than 15 million naira a month for a senator and 10 million naira a month for a member of the House of Representatives. The former president further added that most of the members of the Nigerian National Assembly believe that they are not answerable to anybody. This outburst was said to be in response to an accusation by the former chairman of the House of Reps Appropriation Committee, Mr. Jibrin Abdulmumin, who had alleged in 2016 that the 8th Assembly had padded the 2016 budget after petitioning anti-graft agencies to investigate the matter. The House of Assembly handed Mr. Jibrin, that is the whistleblower now, a 180-day suspension for alleged misconduct. Sounds familiar? Well, it's been 8 years since then, but nothing seems to have changed much. Public perception of the Nigerian National Assembly remains the same. So, I decided to look at the National Assembly to pull out records of our credible lawmakers, both past and present, and in some cases, former governors, to find out why the honorable men and women who make laws for our beloved country Nigeria are being seen as brazenly corrupt and inept in the discharge of their duties. This is like a Know Your Leaders episode. Mind you, everything I'm sharing here is already public record. I felt I still needed to mention that. We begin with the current president of the Nigerian Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio.
It's okay.
Shortly after the conclusion of the 2023 general elections, Mr. Godswill Akpabio, having won his election into the National Assembly as senator representing Akwa Ibom Northwest District, was in the running for who would be the number 3 person in Nigeria. He had the backing of Mr. President, then President-elect Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to become the Senate President in the 10th Assembly. However, there were some unresolved issues that seemed to be threatening Akpabio's ambitions. You see, a report surfaced in national dailies on the 28th of April 2023, detailing how Mr. Akpabio was allegedly playing a hide-and-seek game with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. It turns out that the EFCC had asked Akpabio to turn himself in over corruption investigations involving him. In the report published by Premium Times, Senator Akpabio was asked to report to the EFCC's office on May 9, 2023, having failed to turn up for an earlier invitation dated March 27, 2023. Well, why was such a distinguished senator and an inspiring politician with impeccable character being summoned by the country's anti-graft agency? You see, Godswill Akpabio has gradually worked his way up the political ladder, starting his journey as a commissioner for special duties and petroleum resources under the administration of Governor Victor Atta in Akwa Ibom State. Akpabio soon found himself as governor in 2007, a position he served in until 2015. As is common with Nigerian state governors who love to move from state government houses to the National Assembly, Akpabio became a senator in 2015. By 2019, he was serving as a minister for Niger Delta Affairs in the Muhammadu Buhari's cabinet. However, while Akpabio's political journey might be inspiring to some, it is one riddled with allegations of corruption and misappropriation of public funds. During his tenure as the governor of Akwa Ibom State from 2007 to 2015, there were allegations of corruption and misappropriation of funds against Senator Akpabio's administration. According to a Premium Times report in June 2015, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission launched an investigation into the financial activities of Akpabio's administration to probe the alleged theft of 108.1 billion naira. This was after receiving petitions accusing the former governor of embezzlement, financial mismanagement, and diverting of public funds for personal gains. In the petition submitted to the EFCC by an Abuja-based lawyer and activist, Leo Ekpeyong, it was alleged that between January to December 2014, the trio of Godswill Akpabio, Mr. Etekamba Umoren, and Mr. Udo Isobara made illegal withdrawals of cash amounting to 22.1 billion naira from a designated state government-owned account with Zenith Bank, with this account number displayed right here. Mr. Ekpeyong alleged that the reasons for the withdrawals were unjustifiable expenditures by Godswill Akpabio and his numerous surrogates and proxies. Other withdrawals included an 18 billion naira allegedly taken from the state FAAC account with the United Bank for Africa in tranches of 10 million naira and above by Mr. Isobara. According to Mr. Ekpeyong, a certain Mr. Umoren was rewarded with an appointment as Government House Chief of Staff and subsequently Secretary to the state government under Udom Emmanuel's administration for his help with Akpabio's affairs. The legal practitioner went on to state that over 50 billion naira of Akwa Ibom funds were spent by the former governor during the 2015 general elections. But the allegations of corruption against the former governor didn't stop at the 2015 petitions. As the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs under the Muhammadu Buhari's administration, Akpabio was accused of corruption and mismanagement of funds by several sources, including the Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs, the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, and some civil society groups. According to a report by the Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs, which was based on a forensic audit of the NDDC, Akpabio allegedly diverted 19.25 billion naira meant for the development of the region to his personal accounts. The report also claimed that Senator Akpabio awarded contracts worth 81.5 billion naira to his cronies and relatives without due process. In a public hearing to determine the truth to those allegations, the former minister engaged members of the National Assembly in what has since been turned into a comic affair by Nigerians.
Most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly.
But in all of this, it is important to note that the former governor denies these allegations, claiming they are handiworks of mischief makers who are out to tarnish his good image. Also, no formal charges or convictions have been made against the distinguished Senator Akpabio. Next up on our list is Senator Orji Uzor Kalu.
Before I came to the Senate, before I came into politics, I can buy anything body can buy. I'm not a thief. This country is not fair to so many of us.
In December 2019, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, secured a landmark conviction and sentencing of a former governor of Abia State, the man named Orji Uzor Kalu. The former governor was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment for a 7.65 billion naira fraud. The story started when Mr. Kalu, who is the senator representing Abia North in the National Assembly, was arraigned alongside his company, Slok Nigerian Limited, and a certain Ude Udeogu, his director of finance and accounts at the Abia State Government House, over an amended 39-count charge for conspiring and diverting the sum of 7.65 billion naira from the state coffers. The accused persons were charged over alleged diversion of public funds and money laundering while in office. In one of the counts, the EFCC alleged that the former Abia State Governor, Mr. Kalu, who was in office between 1999 and 2007, procured Slok Nigeria Limited, a company solely owned by the former governor and members of his family, to retain in his accounts, domiciled with the then Inland Bank PLC, a Apapa branch in Lagos State, an aggregate sum of 7,197,871,208 naira and 7 kobo on his behalf. The prosecution team claimed that the 7.1 billion naira formed part of the funds illegally derived from the treasury of the Abia State government, and which was converted into several bank drafts before they were paid into the said company's account. The prosecuting counsel, a certain Rotimi Jacobs, said the ex-governor violated Section 17C of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act of 2004. Apart from the 7.1 billion naira, which he was accused of laundering. The ex-governor and the other defendants were also accused of receiving a total of 460 million naira, allegedly stolen from the Abia State government treasury between July and December 2002. While delivering his judgment, Justice Idris found the defendants guilty on all counts. The former governor was then sentenced to 12 years in prison for 7.65 billion naira fraud. Justice Idris held that the prosecution had established its case against the defendants. The judge further stated that, quote, "No evil deed will go unpunished. The offenses are anti-human. It is condemned worldwide because it is a crime against humanity." End of quote. So, how did this distinguished politician get away from the long arm of the law? I thought Lady Justice had him and his cronies. Well, it turns out Lady Justice is not a keeper after all. In December 2019, Mr. Kalu filed a bail application at a Lagos High Court shortly after filing an appeal against his conviction. While the court rejected his bail application for lack of merit, the Supreme Court was not so dismissive of the former governor's quest. On Friday, the 8th of May 2020, the Supreme Court of Nigeria ruled that Mr. Kalu's trial was wrongly conducted. His conviction was nullified and an order for his release was issued, pending a retrial. Here is a copy of the Supreme Court ruling on this matter. According to the 7-member panel of the Apex Court, in the unanimous verdict delivered by Justice Ejembi Eko, Justice Mohammed Idris, who convicted Mr. Kalu, had already become a justice of the Court of Appeal when he ruled and sentenced Mr. Kalu and his co-defendants as a trial judge. Now, since a justice of the Court of Appeal cannot operate as a judge of the Federal High Court, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court was ordered to reassign the case for retrial. Kalu was eventually released from the custody of the Nigerian Correctional Service, Kuje, on Wednesday, 3rd of June 2020. And yes, the retrial never happened. Apparently, Mr. Kalu is not a thief.
I'm not a thief. I can buy anything body can buy.
Another interesting case I found was that of Senator Joshua Dariye, a former governor of Plateau State. Mr. Dariye was sentenced to 14 years in prison on June 12, 2018 for criminal breach of trust and 2 years for misappropriation of public funds after a long and hard prosecution by the EFCC for a 1.16 billion naira fraud. In a judgment that lasted about 8 hours, Justice Banjoko said, quote, "There's a deep sense of irresponsibility. The defendant was in fact richer than his state. This is a trauma of the trial, and there should be no compromise to corruption. By whatever shade or color or region, rich or poor, corruption will forever be corruption." End of quote. Mr. Dariye was being accused by the EFCC of diverting about 1.16 billion naira ecological funds meant for the state to his personal use, including transferring monies to Ebenezer Rednam Ventures, an unregistered company managed by him and his cronies, and another company named Pinnacle Communications Limited. In proving his case against Dariye, the prosecution team led by Rotimi Jacobs, SAN, called 10 witnesses, including Musa Sunday, the EFCC investigating officer, and Peter Clark, a detective constable with the UK Metropolitan Police in London, who investigated Dariye in the United Kingdom for money laundering offences. Presenting several documents in court, including bank documents, the prosecution established that Ebenezer Rednam Ventures was not a registered company and that its account opening process with then All States Trust Bank was riddled with irregularity, indicating, quote, "dishonest intent" for opening the account. The defense team urged the court to temper justice with mercy, arguing that the bank in question, quote, "misled the governor into engaging in such practice of private banking." End of quote. In fact, in one bizarre act to excuse the corrupt acts of the former governor, his lawyer said, quote, "He is actually a victim. Mistakes were made, but my lord should temper justice with mercy. The lawyer that represented him before did not do a particular good job. This man has suffered." End of quote. And one of the reasons his defense team gave to the court for why the court should have mercy on him was that the prisons, that is, the prisons in Nigeria now, are congested, and that he is a serving senator who served his state. So what they meant was that he shouldn't be sent to the prisons because the prisons were congested. Hallelujah. We now have a big man prisoner, right? After being sentenced to 14 years in 2018, the Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja on Friday, 16th November 2018, reduced the 14-year sentence against Dariye to 10 years. However, Just when Lady Justice was feeling like she finally got one win against corruption, the federal government of Nigeria on the 14th of April 2022 granted presidential pardons to Joshua Darie and our next character, Jolly Nyame. Mr. Jolly Nyame is a former governor of Taraba State. In May 2007, he was charged by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for allegedly diverting 1.64 billion naira of public funds in a 41-count charge of fraud. The commission accused Mr. Nyame of spearheading the fraudulent transfers of funds from the Taraba State Treasury to a company called Saman Global for the purchase of office equipment and stationaries that were never delivered. He was also accused of fraudulently enriching himself and abusing public trust. Of course, the former governor denied all the charges. One of the prosecution witnesses, Abdurrahman Mohammed, an accountant with the state, testified that he brought 24.3 million naira cash meant for the purchase of grains to the former governor, a testimony that was immediately denied by the former governor. However, after much pressing during his cross-examination, Mr. Nyame did admit to signing the memo, while also admitting that no one received the money and no grains were delivered. The allegation of the diversion of 24.3 million naira formed one of the 41 counts bordering on stealing and diversion of state funds brought against Nyame by the EFCC. Well, after finding this man guilty and sentencing him to 14 years in prison, the Court of Appeal reduced the sentence to 12 years with fines ranging from 100 million naira to 5 million naira. This was before the merciful federal government of Nigeria under the incorruptible Muhammadu Buhari, who vigorously fought against corruption, decided to set him free on presidential pardon. Next up is Mommy Stella Odua.
A federal high court in Abuja has threatened to issue a bench warrant of arrest on former aviation minister Stella Odua.
After trying and failing for over 2.5 years, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission finally arraigned the former Minister of Aviation, Stella Odua, and a Chinese construction giant on 5 billion naira fraud charges that were filed against them since December 2020. According to reports, the arraignment was postponed up to 15 times for various reasons, including difficulties in serving some of the defendants, and at another time, the prying of the Attorney General of the Federation's office into the case. In one attempt to stop the case from moving forward, an anonymous petition was written against the trial judge, Inyang Ekwo. Stella Odua and co. were being arraigned on a 25-count charge bordering on money laundering. The accomplices were alleged to be Gloria Odita, Nwobo Emmanuel Namdi, and Irene Chukuma, and 5 companies named Global Offshores and Marine Limited, Tip Top Global Resources Limited, Crystal Television Limited, Sobora International Limited, and China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation. The EFCC accused the defendants of conspiracy to commit money laundering, transferring, taking control, and taking possession of proceeds of fraud, aiding and abetting money laundering, and opening anonymous bank accounts. The former minister was also accused of receiving 1.6 billion naira in fraud payments into the account of Global Offshore and Marine Limited, with this account number displayed right on the screen, domiciled with First Bank PLC from ISEC Security Nigerian Limited, with this bank account domiciled with First Bank PLC, an act that contravenes the Money Laundering Prohibition Act. Well, the defendants pleaded not guilty and were granted bail by Justice Ekwo. Mrs. Odua failed repeatedly to appear for her trial, prompting the judge in July 2021, 7 months after the case was filed, to threaten to issue a warrant for her arrest. In 2022 alone, the case was adjourned on 7 occasions. This was amidst reports that the then Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, was also delaying the case. Mr. Malami's legal advice approving the trial only came in October 2022. In 7 of the counts where this Chinese company is indicted along with Mrs. Odua and Mrs. Odita, the company was accused of conspiring with the women to commit money laundering and directly transferring to private banking nominees' account various sums of money totaling 2.5 billion naira. However, Justice Ekwo urged the EFCC to fish out the culprits behind the corporate body and bring them before the court. By November 2023, it was reported that the EFCC have been ordered to hand over the case to the Attorney General's office for further prosecution. Whether or not Lady Justice is going to be dealt a heavy blow once again remains to be seen. Another interesting case I have for you has to do with the former Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki.
Corruption trial for Nigeria's Senate President Bukola Saraki, the third most powerful person in the country, has begun in Abuja.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission accused former Senate President Bukola Saraki of diverting 12 billion naira from the treasury of the Kwara State government illegally while he was governor of the state between 2003 and 2011. The commission claimed that the money was withdrawn in cash. The money, the EFCC said, was allegedly used by Mr. Saraki to offset a 1.36 billion naira bank loan he used in purchasing homes at 15, 15A, 17, 17A, and 4 flats at McDonald Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. The said properties were eventually seized by the EFCC. The EFCC said Mr. Saraki, through his companies, had taken loans worth 1.36 billion naira from the Guaranty Trust Bank (GTB) and Intercontinental Bank, now known as Access Bank, between 2005 and 2006. In a bid to offset these loans, the ex-governor allegedly began to divert 100 million naira from the coffers of the state monthly. The affidavit stated that on February 28, 2005, the Presidential Implementation Committee on the Sale of Federal Government Landed Properties wrote a letter to Mr. Saraki conveying the approval of the then Minister of Lands and Housing for the sale of properties at number 15 and 17 McDonald Road, Ikoyi. The EFCC said, sequel to the letter, Mr. Saraki wrote to GTB on March 8, 2005, requesting for 200 million naira loan to finance the acquisition of the said properties. And on March 24, 2005, GTB approved the loan to partly finance the purchase of these properties. The agency said on October 11, 2006, another loan of 380 million naira was granted to the ex-Senate President by GTB to partly finance the acquisition of properties located at 17 and 17A McDonald Road, Ikoyi. And on January 30, 2007, a personal loan of 380 million naira was again granted to the former governor to partly finance the same properties, it said. According to the EFCC, another loan of 400 million naira was obtained by Mr. Saraki to develop the same properties on April 28, 2009. It was further alleged that the personal loans used to acquire the properties were later liquidated with the proceeds of Mr. Saraki's criminal breach of trust or misappropriation of funds of the Kwara State government. The EFCC claimed that Mr. Saraki procured one Abdul Adama, who was his personal member of staff, to receive cash from then Controller of Finance and Account of Government House, Kwara State, Mr. Isiaka Karim, on a monthly basis, the sum of 100 million naira. While Mr. Saraki was the governor of Kwara State, the total sum of 12 billion naira was allegedly withdrawn in cash from the Kwara State Government House's account, domiciled in Zenith Bank. Mr. Saraki accused the EFCC of acting on the orders of the APC to witch hunt him, an allegation that was promptly denied by the commission. Saraki claimed that the acting EFCC chairman at the time, Ibrahim Magu, was on a revenge mission because of the role Saraki played in blocking his confirmation as EFCC chairman. He had also alleged that he was being witch-hunted by the anti-graft body because he emerged as the Senate President against the wishes of certain elements within the All Progressive Congress in 2015. He said the aggrieved elements in the APC were using the EFCC agency to hunt and harass him. Well, whether or not his claims of witch hunt are true cannot be independently determined, as he was engaged in a bitter feud with Buhari's APC at the time. Another interesting character is Ibrahim Shekarau. Mr. Shekarau is a former governor of Kano State, a former minister of education. In 2018, the EFCC arraigned Mr. Shekarau alongside former Foreign Affairs Minister Aminu Wali and one Mansour Ahmad on 6 counts bordering on conspiracy and money laundering to the tune of 950 million naira. Shekarau was arraigned alongside his accomplice for allegedly collecting the said sum from a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Alison Desani, for the main purpose of influencing the outcome of the 2015 general elections. Counsel to the EFCC, Johnson Ojogbani, had earlier told the court that the defendants conspired amongst themselves and received the said amount without going through financial institutions. He said that the money was issued to the defendants by the People's Democratic Party and former Minister of Petroleum, Desani Alison Madioke. In 2020, a court of appeal dismissed the case against the former governor and acquitted him of the money laundering charges. In yet another interesting case, we have Danjuma Goje. Danjuma Goje, a former governor of Gombe State, was charged by the EFCC in 2011 alongside Aliyu El Nafati, the former executive chairman of the state's Universal Basic Education Board, for an alleged 25 billion naira fraud. The accused persons were alleged to have engaged in financial impropriety, including the contract of food supply to the state government house during Goje's tenure and loan facilities obtained from banks. The case, which dragged on for years, took a bizarre turn during Buhari's second term in office. In June 2019, the Cable newspaper reported that the EFCC allegedly pulled out of the case after Goje withdrew from the Senate presidency race to endorse Ahmad Lawan. In subsequent reports, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation took over the 5 billion naira fraud case of the senator from the EFCC. Remember, the Attorney General of the Federation has the power to institute, continue, or discontinue criminal proceedings against any persons in any court of law in Nigeria. However, after taking over this case, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation decided not to proceed with the case and thus withdrew from the case, consequently terminating it. And another one bites the dust. I think the lady with the most number of heartbreaks in Nigeria has got to be our dear Lady Justice. Throughout my research into this topic to see how the EFCC conducts its business of investigating and prosecuting alleged corrupt officials, one common denominator I've come to see is the influence of the party in power. While some arrests and prosecutions are labeled as witch hunts, others are celebrated as a win for anti-corruption. Meanwhile, we have cases being dismissed by authorities just because they can. Leaves me wondering when and if at all our country can ever defeat corruption.